and their cultivation. All through their Bible, there are statements designed to make us aware of danger. Just as on our highways, you see a sign that says, "This way to Peoria," just outside here, or Brownsburg, or north to Chicago. But as well, if you'll follow the signs, there are signs that warn of dangerous curves or obstructions in the road requiring a detour. So this is the kind of statement we want to look at tonight. There's two of them, actually. It's repeated twice in the book of Proverbs. Chapter 14 and verse 12, "There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death." And then again in chapter 16, in verse 25, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death." So that there are things that seem good, but it doesn't always turn out that way. There are four things I want you to see about this as we think about it. Four observations, and I'll review in case you get lost or I get lost, so that we know what the four are that we saw. First of all, things are not what they seem. Now, I'm not going to go through all these, but I'll ask you first, up here, do you see a duck or a rabbit? And over there, do you see a beautiful young girl or an old man's nose with a big nose? And how many legs does that elephant have? How many does it have? I think it's confusing, doesn't it? It looks like he's got all kinds of legs. You get to staring at that thing that's just filled with legs after a while. And look at that other contraption down there. Does that have 4 fingers on it or 3? It looks like 3 to me. Are you sure? Look at it again. Appearances and first impressions are not always accurate. They're not always what you think. There are 2 things that you can think about as you consider what that might be. You know, every now and then, my grandson Joe has decided he's a great fisherman. And I have sort of promised him that eventually I will teach him ice fishing, which I used to enjoy and still do quite a bit. But one of the dangers of ice fishing is you've got to make sure of the ice. Because every now and then we read of some foolish person who, when it looked like there was ice on the lake, got out there and lo and behold, the ice wasn't as thick as it should be. And falling through the ice into that cold water is dangerous, completely dangerous. You want to be real sure about falling through the ice. But as well, every now and then we've got 2 water systems down at our blueberry field. One of them we run all sorts of fertilizer through and nutrients for the plants. And if you were to open a tap on that, that would be poisoned water. But then we've got another sign on another one that says it is potable water. That is, it comes straight from the well and you can drink it. So there's a danger of drinking water. It looks like water. It looks like it's okay. But there's a danger of drinking poisoned water. It looks fine, but lo and behold, you can get sick from it. And this truth is something we have to also keep in mind concerning our morals and our religion. It seems right, seems good, but its end is the way of death. So, let's turn our attention to some of these things as we think about them. Some form of entertainment. My goodness, we're just having good fun. Some form of entertainment may be right, may seem to be right, but after just a little while, it becomes obvious that it's detrimental and it's harmful. Everything on your television, everything on your computer is not okay. There's filth on there that will poison your mind and misdirect your life. So you need to be careful about that. It seems harmless. It's just a screen in your room, a TV, or just a computer. You're not doing anything, you're just watching. But after a while, you find it's ruined your life. And in religion, a religious practice may be approved by everybody, but when you really study the matter and check the scriptures, lo and behold, it's just dead wrong. Some things are not what they seem, and that applies to doctrines and moral issues, religious institutions, religious personalities. How many times have we heard somebody say, well, that fellow's such a pleasing man. He looks good and he seems good and his wife looks good and the children smile. He must be a good man and he wouldn't guide me in the wrong direction. But lo and behold, he does. I find out after a while, maybe he wasn't always that good. Appearances, pathway may look smooth among flower beds, may be attractive and appealing, but in the end, it's the way of death. You might notice several New Testament passages that speak to this. In 1 Thessalonians 2, test all things, prove all things. It's the version we use in the King James. Test all things. Hold fast that which is good. Make sure. In 1 John 4 and verse 1, beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits. The King James says, try the spirits, whether they're of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. And you know, those false prophets don't have a sign on them that says false prophet. It just doesn't work that way. In Proverbs 14 again, where we were reading, there's a way that seemeth right to a man, but its end is the way of death. One of the things that I want you to notice is that man is not the highest surveyor of life. Do you know what a surveyor is, kids? Don't have any idea. What? Do you know what it is, Isaac? That guy right there? What's he doing? He's looking through a telescope, sort of a thing, to find out where the corners of property is. He's surveying it. How many feet it is to this corner, what the angle is. Very expensive. But if you got a piece of ground, you got to find out, where's my border, so that I don't wind up cutting trees down off my neighbor's yard or building my building halfway over the line. So man, though, is not as a surveyor of his life. Man isn't the highest, isn't the best surveyor of life. There are philosophies of humanism and subjectivism, and these all have one thing in common. They say man is the highest surveyor of life. Man determines what's right and what's wrong. Man determines the best way to govern his life. But you and I need to compare the human perspective with the divine perspective. God doesn't always see things the way you do. You might notice the idea that man sees the appearance. We see the way a person looks. And lo and behold, they look pretty good. Got a tie on, a nice vest, a coat that will actually still button. So he looks pretty good. Got his hair sort of combed, what little there is left of it. But God doesn't just see the tie and the vest and the coat that'll button. He sees the heart. That's the part you can't see. That's the part you don't know about. Man judges a thing beyond appearances. You know, I'm a one of the things I studied in school was history. Boy, you sort of got an idea of when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but I don't know everything. And then I'm told that, lo and behold, Leif Erikson discovered the New World long before Columbus did. And so I don't know how to make up a rhyme about Leif Erikson. So I know just a little bit, just a smattering of history. We can't even figure out how in the world they built the pyramids. I keep seeing stuff about that, suggesting other things. But God, when he looks back in the past, he knows exactly what happened. He knows the past. And in addition, when I look in the future, whew, I got no idea about the future. If I had a good knowledge of the future, I would involve myself a lot more in betting. And I would do sports betting. I'd know who's going to win the next game. I'd invest a lot more in the stock market because I'd know what stocks are going to be the big winners. Or if you like to sell short, I'd know which ones are going to be the big losers. I'd know those things. And so I'd take all my little pot of money and I'd stick it on the XYZ Corporation. And I'd just see my money grow enormously. But I don't know the future. I don't have any idea. I sort of guess at it. But God knows exactly what's going to happen. And so as you think about this, who in the world has the best visibility, the best notion of how to govern our lives? A lot of times I've discovered that I'm affected by prejudice. Isaac, do you know what prejudice is? You don't know. Isaac, what do you like to eat and don't like to eat? I know you like donuts. I have discovered that. I have found that you really like donuts. What doesn't Isaac like to eat? Everything else, Isaac rules out everything else except donuts. Well, so Isaac is governed in life by a prejudice. Ooh, that looks like broccoli. Sound advice. Who wants to eat that? I'd rather pass the donuts over here. We also are governed by our selfishness. I have seen Isaac drag a dozen donuts into our house in that little white box, like they box it up at Long's. And I have said, "Oh, Isaac, thank you for bringing me donuts. That boy will not even let me open the box." He said, "No, these are my donuts. You don't get any of them." Selfishness. A lot of times we have some motive, some ulterior motive, but the Lord, when he deals with us, he's impartial. He's fair in all his judgments. And so as you think about who's the best one to determine what we should do in life, how we should govern our lives, maybe man isn't the best one to make those decisions. We can be blinded by passion. Every now and then we get mad. And have you discovered that when you get mad, you do stupid things? I've seen people get mad and they'd break the thing they were working on, when a little bit more patience would have lasted a little bit longer. It would have been better. We can be tempted. The Lord can't be tempted. But we can be tempted to go in absolutely the wrong direction. Those things don't happen to God. Who has the better view of things? Who's the best surveyor? Is it you or is it the Lord? In Isaiah 31 in verse 3, now the Egyptians are men, not God. They were trying to form an alliance with the Egyptians, and God didn't want them to. He says their horses are flesh and not spirit. When Jehovah stretches out his hand, both he who helps will fall, and he who is helped will fall down. They all will perish together. He says there's a different view when God comes to deal with the situation. In Ezekiel, the 22nd chapter, her priests have violated my law, profaned my holy things. They have not distinguished between the holy and the unholy. Neither have they made known the difference between the unclean and the clean. And they have hidden their eyes from my Sabbath, so that I am profaned among them. Who was the best one to decide this? These priests that couldn't distinguish between holy and unholy? In Jeremiah 10, O Jehovah, I know the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man who walks to direct his steps. You can't make the decisions. You're really not very good at it. If it's left up to you, you're going to make a mess. You need to follow the directions that God's given. And again, back to our passage. There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time, didn't it? Sincerity doesn't stop consequences in life. Did you realize that? Just because you're sincere about a thing doesn't stop the consequences that may happen. You may be completely convinced that a certain thing is right. You may believe it with all your heart. But if it's a mistake, there will be horrible consequences. And nothing you do will stop that. Nothing you do will stop that. Being sincere doesn't change a thing. Think about two things as you consider this. I mentioned that I'm not a very good investor. You know, have you ever, one or two of you fellows I know have been known to invest in the stock market. Have you ever made a bad investment? You know, it seemed like a great idea. Folks were touting it up, gone up a little bit. Seemed like a good idea for you to jump into that particular market. Lo and behold, wasn't. Did your sincere belief in the investment change anything? You know, back in, when would it have been, 2003, 2004? Maybe you could have bought some of those bonds based on mortgages that everybody was selling. Boy, things are going up. Seemed like a bargain. Paying real good interest. Terrific. And lo and behold, then there's the crash. Did the fact that you were sincere in your investment, did that change anything? No, your money was gone and glimmering. Most of our 401ks were crushed. You build a ship. It's unsinkable. It can't fail until it hits an iceberg. Seemed like a good idea. There were about 2,500 people aboard that ship. They all thought it was a good idea. The unsinkable ship. It failed. Did their sincerity of the builder, did the sincerity of the passengers, did the sincerity of the captain, did any of that change anything? No. It was a disaster. There's the possibility that a lot of people are walking down a pathway they really are not certain about. And sincerity won't stop them. Again, in Proverbs 14, there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. It seems right. It felt good. The fact that it seems right doesn't cancel the death. But a lot of people think when it comes to religion, as long as you sincerely believe a thing, you'll be okay. We shouldn't be critical because I really believe it. A wrong choice can lead to death. This is so in respect to physical death. Goodness, look at that car. Got wrapped around that post. You know, the fact that you think that everything is clear and that train isn't coming very fast, it's not going to change much when the train hits you, is it? You made a bad choice. This is just the wrong direction, the wrong thing to do. In driving an automobile, a wrong choice can lead to death. You discovered that in life? Every now and then you thought that you're going to see a lot of people that way here this winter. They're going to think, hey, the road's surely clear. Then they hit that ice. And so they were driving too fast to control their car. They didn't have good braking, and they're going to wind up at best with a bill when they wreck their car. And at worst, they're going to kill themselves. It's a bad choice. Surely we've seen the dangers of drugs and alcohol. I know one or two of you are dealing with relatives who drink too much, who become addicted to drugs. And they're nice folks. They've made some lousy choices in life. And their choices are steadily killing them. They're ruining their life. They're ruining any prospect for the future. They're ruining their influence. It can lead to death. You know, homosexuality. We're told over and over again we should not say anything about this. This is just a choice that they made. Well, it's a wrong choice. And it can lead to physical death, but there's another kind of death. The Bible speaks about a spiritual death. In Ephesians 2, he made alive who were dead in trespasses and sins. Dead in trespasses and sins. Write that down, Max. Dead. Max doesn't get whole sentences, but you write down the word dead. D-E-A-D. Dead. Come on, I don't see you writing. You can do this. Max, you're one of those guys where if anybody tells you to do anything, you're going to do the opposite, aren't you? Yeah, that's another bad choice that you can make in life. You'll find out about that eventually. In Revelation 21, the cowardly, the unbelieving, the abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone. What I want you to think about that just a little bit as you consider it. Consider it. What is there in that verse about those people who are called cowardly? How did they become cowards? How did they become cowards? Choice. That's the way they chose to live. It was easier. You remember the one-talent man who said, I was afraid, went and hid my talent in the earth? What did he do? He made a choice. Instead of doing what he should have done, which his master told him, he went and hid his talent. And that choice results in the second death. When we look at Revelation 21:8, we need to look at a variety of wrong choices which lead to the second death. There's a list of them there. Proverbs 4 reminds us there's a way that seems right to me. We've got people all over this country who've decided that fornication and adultery is okay. That it's not going to really harm them or their families or the society. And I suppose they'll probably manage without too much physical harm. But its end is the way of death. Now then, tonight, I've shown you four things. Four things that you ought to get. If you guys are making notes, you're making notes out of there, Ethan, here's the four things I taught you. First, some things are not what they seem to be. They look safe. Remember, the ice looks safe, but it may not be thick enough. Some things are not what they seem. Remember that duck? Was it a duck or was it a rabbit? In addition, man isn't the best one to look out for life. We're not the one who can see the best. We can't see the past. We can't see the future. And we're governed by all sorts of goofy notions of passion and prejudice, selfishness. Whereas the Lord isn't. So we're not the best judge of how we should do things. You know, your parents have tried to teach you that. Isaac, your parents are trying desperately to teach you that donuts are not the staff of life. That you've got to eat other things. An occasional donut is great, but there has to be broccoli. There has to be other stuff. There has to be those other good things. Because, why? They know, how old are you now? Are you 8, 7, or 8? You're what? 7. They know that a 7-year-old boy is not always able to make the best choices. And they're older and smarter, and they can help you with some of those choices. Well, the Lord knows that a 70-year-old man is not always able to make the best choices. He's trying to help me out too. But in addition, sincerity, thinking I did it honestly and sincerely, it just doesn't stop the consequences. You know, I thought I could jump off the roof of the building and flap my arms real hard, and I'd be able to fly. Can you? What happens? You fall down. What happens when you fall off the top of a building? You go splat. You break things. And you know, the fact that you were sincere and think, well, I thought I could fly. Doesn't change anything, does it? You're still going to go splat. It's all well and good you think you're Superman or Spider-Man or Batman. But that's not the way it works. And fourthly, I've taught you that a bad choice can lead to death. Bad choice can lead to death. Now, in view of this, view of the fact that, lo and behold, some things are not what they seem, man isn't the best choice maker, sincerity doesn't stop the consequences, and a wrong choice can lead to death, what ought we to do? Since we know these 4 things. First of all, we ought to be sure of every step we take in life. We may be sincere, but we may be wrong. So we need to make certain as we can, because we're not dealing with the investment of a little money. We're not dealing with the idea of getting lost in a big city. We're dealing with our life. The end is the way of death. That suddenly got very serious. We may be sincere, but wrong. So we need to be sure that we're right. And if we have a copy of the Bible, I notice 2 or 3 of you kids are carrying a Bible. Michaela, you've got one. Ethan, you do, usually. Do you have your Bible tonight? That's good. Come to church without a Bible. That's a good plan. Nathan, do you have your own Bible? Well, we're working on that, Nathan. Let's keep working on it. You're learning to read. You need to learn to read your Bible. You need to read it and be able to properly apply it. You know, we can't depend on what seems right in our man. We need to put our trust in God, in the Bible. In Proverbs 14, there's a way that seems right, but the end thereof is the way of death. And so, quite simply, what pathway are you following? It's really kind of simple, isn't it? Which road are you going down? Are you going down the one the Lord has directed? Are you sure the pathway's on the right way? There's a way that seems to be right and can't be wrong. There's a pathway that leads to all spiritual blessings in John 14 and verse 6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. that was simple. How can I possibly save my life? How can I possibly direct my life? Well, follow Him. He's the way, the truth, and the life. So, tonight, we ask you to examine. Look at the path you're on. And if you're not on the path following Him, you need to change the direction of your life. If you're here tonight, not a Christian, would you obey? If you are a Christian and have wandered off, it's time to come back while we stand and sing. You